It has been funny. I was in a meeting yesterday. We didn't have the lights totally dialed in, and my face was really bright, and it made the background look complete darkness. And everyone's like, "It looks like you're taking like a middle school photo for a yearbook, like a yearbook photo." That's what this looks like. And
let's bring those back. Let's bring those back.
We will. We'll bring those back soon. Coming soon. Talking Too Loud yearbook photos. Get your yearbook. Hello and welcome to Talking Too Loud with Chris Savage. I'm your host, Chris Savage. I am joined by the lovely, the precocious.
Oh,
is that a word?
That's a new adjective. I don't know
okay,
why
we'll
that
start
got
again.
me.
We'll start again. Sorry, Sylvie. All right. Hello and welcome to Talking Too Loud with Chris Savage. I am your host, Chris Savage. I am joined by Sylvie Lubau, direct from the United States of America. Sylvie, how are you?
Almost Europe, though. Almost. I'll save that for what's got me talking too loud.
Okay, good. Well, we have a great episode today. Kieran Flanagan, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Zapier and the former SVP of Marketing at HubSpot, is here with us talking about how brands and marketers need to prepare for a world where AI is everywhere and it's changed everything that we know. So just some light stuff, easy topics.
Easy breezy.
But it was, I mean, obviously like cool conversation, timely conversation, I really think people are going to pull a lot of nuggets from this that actually impact like how they are marketing in the near term. So I'm excited for this interview to get out there.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah. Okay, Sylvie, how are we? What's got you talking too loud?
Well, as I mentioned before, I am on my way to Europe, to Portugal specifically.
Hey-o.
Very excited about that. Haven't been to Europe in a long, long time.
We're talking 6 weeks, 10 weeks since you've been there?
We're talking some years.
Okay.
I can't even remember the last time I was there. But yeah, I'm very excited. I've never been to Portugal. Gonna go to Lisbon.
Amazing.
Then down south to the Algarve region. Hopefully, find some tinned fish. I'm really into tinned fish. I don't know if that's like big for you, but I'm a big tinned fish lover.
Tinned fish.
Like, sardines and mackerel and fish in a tin.
Great. That's
and beaches
lovely.
and culture and museums and,
And tinned fish.
There's more.
You can get tinned fish in other places.
You sure can, but it won't be as fresh or as beautiful.
Yeah.
What's got you talking too loud over there?
Well, I'm very excited because we are continuing to transform my setup here.
It's looking so good. And
so, we've got last time I think we had the walls painted. Now we have more lights. And I've got 3. 1, 2, 3. I've got this like teleprompter set up with an iPad. So when I see you, I'm looking into a camera, but I see your face.
It's wild.
This is something I've always...
The intensity of your eye contact is real.
That's what we're going for. But it feels good to be upgrading the setup. I had an initial setup that served me very well. And now I make so much content. You and I make content together, do webinars, live events, other people's podcasts, record videos internally, record videos externally. So it makes sense. Like this one camera, if it looks good, it makes everything easier.
Looks matter, guys. Hate to say it. Hate to say it.
You heard it here first from Sylvie.
Judge
Lubau.
all the books by all the covers.
Looks matter. The only thing that matters about a book is its cover, which is all that shows up in the Kindle app anyway. So that's what we're working with.
See? Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Well, speaking of things that matter, how's that for a transition? Let's jump into this conversation with Kieran about marketing, AI, what you need to do to get ready, what's happening today, what are the channels that are going to stay good, what are the channels that are going to be bad. Let's do it.
Let's do it. That got a little shimmy going for me. I was excited.
Hey-o. Kieran, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm excited that you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Sorry, I'm excited to be on.
And we're excited that you're here. And I know you're a pro at the podcast game, so we're just going to go fast and loose. We're going to get right into this thing.
Yeah.
Now, as you know, the show is called Talking Too Loud, and it's called Talking Too Loud because I am a child, and when I get excited, I cannot control the volume of my voice. And so, when we talk about marketing or creative or entrepreneurship, I get extremely loud. But we love to start the show by talking to our guests about what has them talking too loud these days. What's got you excited? So I'd love to know what's got you excited. What's got you talking too loud?
All right, I'll go for something outside of like tech because hopefully not all of our lives are defined by tech. And I'm also kind of a weird person, so like I'm pretty like.
Oh, good.
I know that about myself, and so I get obsessed by things. I am super obsessed by like strategic games, and so I played a lot of chess. And then got really into, I used to play poker when I was younger and then never really had time to play it and still do not have time to play it, but I am fascinated by the psychology of it. So before I go to bed, because I have this weird work life because I'm managing most people who are based in like San Francisco and I'm based in Ireland. So like my work life is very, very odd. And so I usually go to bed at 2 a.m. And so I have this but I have to switch off because my brain races. And so I started to watch like poker to switch off and I am just like, I'm just fascinated by the game. I'm fascinated by the psychology. I'm fascinated by how you can disassociate yourself from money. And I was watching a poker hand where the entire pot between two people is worth 3 million. And you have to like make incredible decisions about like what you feel that person is doing versus what you're doing. And it's kind of like somewhat baked in math. And so I could talk about it forever. Like this is like, I guess the point of your question is like, I just find that stuff like super interesting, the way humans adapt to certain environments.
Yeah, no, I find it interesting too. I used to play poker in college and then kind of like didn't play as much, but I always loved it. And I love the aspect of trying to read someone in particular. That's
right.
like, but then recently I realized there's like game theory optimal and all this stuff.
It's incredible.
And I tried to get into it, but it takes a lot of work. Have you gotten into that at all, the GTO game?
Yeah, so it's very similar to you. I used to play it and I used to play it like years ago, and I thought it was like a pretty simplistic game where you were just trying to read the decisions your opponent were trying to make. And now there's game theory, and now you realize that the professional poker players are some of the smartest people in the world, right? Yeah. Like they can hold an incredible amount of math plus different scenarios that they have to do based upon what your actions are, and so I understand parts of it, but could I actually play a game using game theory? No way. But I have learned like a couple of things that are like very, very like simple things that I had never even thought of before. But I think like it is one of the things I actually started to try to use ChatGPT for, is to go back and forth with that as being my poker coach.
Yeah, and did it work? Because I tried that and I couldn't get a good prompt.
No, it's not. But I wonder now if
how
you can.
do I win the pot?
Yeah.
Of $3 million?
It's like train me on game theory optimal. Basically, it's like
But there's a new tool called Prometheus or something like that I think is based upon AI plus game theory, and you can actually run your different scenarios through that. It does reduce. The one thing is like it's happening in chess, right? The chess became really popular, was all over the news because there might be cheating and humans love scandal, right? Like chess is really boring until there's scandal. Yeah. But the real thing that's happening with chess is like AI is able to start to reduce there's this incredible article or study that was done on AI and talked a lot about how AI would take expertise and commoditize them. And so anyone who had really learned and put a lot of years into learn a skill was going to be at a disadvantage because they get dragged into the middle because everyone now has that skill. Like it's kind of commoditized their expertise. And there's a little bit of that happening across like games like chess and poker, where it's kind of like it becomes because you know the scenario so well through like these AI compositions of like showing you all the things you should do based upon what they do, what cards you have, that it's kind of like it takes the psychology out of it. It's like, okay, well this is what I meant to do in this situation. This is what I meant to do in this situation. And if you watch poker now, you'll see the professionals go, I know what I meant to do here. And like they actually know the exact thing they're meant to do based upon the entire setup. It's then just do they have any amount of gut instinct to change that behavior? Yeah,
it's an interesting problem. It's also interesting, I think about it with like, once we had really good AI in chess, the best players got better, right? People realized, like learned from it and propelled forward. And So it is an interesting thing and an interesting analogy. And I find the same parts of poker interesting that you do, which is like, how do you separate yourself from money? How do you remove sunk cost? How do you when you're optimizing your bets relative to pot size, where it's like, you're likely not to win, but given the betting structure of what's happened, even though you have a very low chance, you actually should stay in, and all these really interesting things that actually I think apply to our jobs day to day. But they're hard because the jobs can be so emotional, and there's people and dollars and all this stuff. So it is interesting.
Yeah. And actually one of the really interesting things is professional poker players will play hands that probably will lose, but they won't lose a lot of money. But they do that to change the perception of the type of hands that they'll play at the table. So there's all of these other things happening. And on the AI thing, I think that's what a really interesting topic to discuss on AI, whether we do here or not, is, and I've been thinking about this, which is categories of skills, and the kind of fine, you're fine at this, and then you kind of go, okay, good and great. And what the point you made about chess is, hey, you could argue that AI takes everyone who's fine and okay and into the good bucket. And the question is, does it take anyone who is in the great bucket and make them even better, right? Does it just commoditize things and drag everyone up and then kind of start to drag people down? Or does it take the best 5% of people and actually make them much, much better? And so they still do have that differentiation of skill set, and they still are as valuable. And I think that's going to be an interesting thing. Does it commoditize, and is it deflationary for wages, or actually do you still have a certain percent of people who are just much, much better at that thing than others?
Yeah, I think that's a super interesting topic. We're going to get it. And I want to go deeper on AI, but first I want to zoom back out a little bit. And introduce you to everybody. So you were the CMO at Zapier. You were also formerly the SVP of Marketing at HubSpot. And you've been in the B2B marketing game for a while. And I would love if you could just tell me and also tell our audience, what does great marketing look like today?
Oh, darn, that is a good question. I think there's two parts of marketing, right? There is brand, which is really being crystal clear on why you exist. And this is a really good line. Actually, I'm stealing this a little bit from Joanna Lord, who we talked to recently, who's ex-CMO ClassPass. And growth, which is getting the word out there of why you do exist, right? There's two parts, the creation of demand and the capture of demand. I think incredible marketing is getting really simplistic messaging into your brand that's differentiated, but is super clear. And so I'll give you a really good example. There was this incredible advertising campaign recently from Ikea, and it was a really great example of marketing because it said a lot without having to say much. And it was this ad, and it started with a camera, and it was panned into a cot or a crib. I don't know what you call them in the US. We call them a cot, which is where crib, the baby sleeps. Yeah, where the baby sleeps. And it just had it was so focused in, you couldn't see if anyone was in it or not. And it started to pan out, and it was empty. And then it panned out again, and the baby was lying on the mother's chest in the bed. And the message was IKEA, proud to be second best. And that's an example of clear brand messaging, creative, saying a lot without having to say much. And I think when you look in B2B,
it's good.
Basically we're all faster, ease of use, fast, cheap. We all know the things, because that's typically how people buy software, but you have to stand for something more than that. I think you have to differentiate yourself in more unique ways. And then I think the second part of that is just having an incredible go-to-market motion where you can actually have repeatable, scalable ways to actually capture that demand. And what I find in B2B is, because this is the way founders actually choose their marketing leader, is I really believe I have a bias towards brand and product position, and that's the person I want to hire. Or I have a bias towards go-to-market, and that's a person I should hire. What actually incredible B2B marketing has both, right? It has both sides of the coin.
I love that. Yeah. I think I like the way you broke that down, and also the bring it back to the IKEA example, because it is there, whether or not people like it, or if they don't like it, they're very late to the game. Emotion matters, right?
Right.
And our customers are human beings. And so, if you don't have a brand that means something, you're basically just making your life harder for yourself. And same thing if you don't have a consistent go-to-market motion, which I kind of want to dig in a little bit there for folks too, of what that can look like, when you're at the scale of Zapier and you're growing and you have, I know, a huge organic piece of the puzzle and you all these different, like, how does that process work? I think is something that folks would be interested in hearing about. Like, how do you help humans through that part of the story? Like, what does it feel like? What does it look like?
On the go-to-market motion piece, like capturing that demand. Yeah, I think like I hear this thing in B2B a lot. Actually, I was thinking through this today, which is like, oh, like what's the strategy? What's the strategy? What's the strategy? The strategy for all B2B technology SaaS companies is like pretty simplistic, which is like you have to like have repeatable ways to acquire customers, get them to be engaged within your product and get them to upgrade and use the product more often so they go up through the tiers, right? And do that more than you actually lose customers so you have net dollar positive retention. And so then it just comes into like, okay, well, what are the commonalities between channels that allow you to actually scale that go-to-market? And there's not actually a lot in B2B, right? Like you have product channel fit with search. So you have some way that you can actually have informational search that surrounds your product and transactional search. And that's like HubSpot has done that really well, where, you know, we have very little search traffic for someone looking for the inbound marketing platform, but we can help you in all of the things that you can do around marketing or sales or customer success. And then over time, you'll end up using that platform, or a small percentage of you use that platform. You have virality where the product shares itself. And we've all seen examples of that. Loom, Calendly, all of these different things. You have like a Zapier is a good example of a growth engine through search, through the kind of app directory marketplace they had, but also be the example of being a category leader because they created the no-code space for that category. And so you have incredible word of mouth, and that category leader gets you a lot of runway. And so you have like really virality search, maybe like mobile companies for the most part, mobile games companies fit really well with paid. It doesn't really become the premier channel within B2B. I don't think it's usually the most scalable channel within B2B. And then outside of that, like that's really it, right? Like social, all of these other things are like good to have and can impact those core channels. But if you want to become a really, really big business, if you don't have search fit, if you don't have virality fit, word of mouth or incentivized, or like the Dropbox model, if you don't have maybe some form of pay, but I always think that's a secondary channel for B2B, not a primary channel, you're likely going to be an enterprise company doing outbound marketing. Like, you know, that is the truth. And so I think that when you look at the SaaS technology B2B space, it's a puzzle and everyone has like different pieces, but it all kind of comes together in similar ways. And so I think the really thing that matters for companies is, and I'm going on a tangent here, but the thing that really matters is not so much the strategic, it's like the tactics. And I think what I've realized over the course of like the big bloat of like technology companies is you have a lot of people who know how to do strategy memos and maybe have lost the ability to like do tactics, which is like the line by line of what are we going to do and basically execute on that. And then the prioritization. So being able to understand at any given point in time in your growth, if you're a Series A company, you could take on less things than a public company, but prioritization matters across the entire stack of a company's growth from C to B, from A to B to C to public. And if you're prioritizing the right things and you are able to like get deep into the tactics and ship the right things, then like they are the companies, in my opinion, that excel.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I love the way you broke that down. I mean, I think you hit on a few of the different core elements that you need. And I think your point is definitely what I've heard from other folks is like, you can't get big unless you have one of these core engines working, right? Like right. You cannot scale. Just the math doesn't make sense. And it's weird because I think a lot of folks go default to paid acquisition. I think, I don't know why that is, if it's because of like e-commerce in particular. It seems like you can drive like a lot of growth there. But that seems like the easy answer when you talk about having a scalable customer acquisition cost, right? It's like, oh, well then it's paid. That's obviously, if you spend $1,000, you get a customer, like just go do it all day. But the truth of it is, it usually doesn't work like that. And like, yeah, you have to have these other engines, I think, going, and word of mouth and like connections from person to person really matter.
Yeah. And I think this comes into like, what is defensible in marketing in a, let's imagine there's a post Google world or a world where search is much more diminished. And I do think like things that are incredibly important for B2B brands to excel at, like you guys do this, is like media, right? And I think the thing when I say media, people are like, oh yeah, like a blog. There is a big difference between people who truly do media and people who do SaaS content marketing. Like, yeah, I'm talking about like being able to create things that are part of the internet culture, that are part of the way that people entertain themselves. Like there's a different way that you create that content. But I think media, because you want to have not just the content that people want when they are trying to search for something, like that helps you to be a trusted source of information when that person has a need. But I think more and more B2B companies need to become a trusted source of information, but also entertainment each and every day. So you have a connection with these people outside of like searching through Google. The second thing is community, right? I think community is very defensible because you own the community. You're not relying on a third-party platform that they change what they do, then it changes up your distribution engine. I think those two things are incredibly important for like B2B brands to actually master.
Now we're going back to AI. I want to put these together a little bit because you made reference to this. I'm not sure everyone gets exactly what when you talk about, oh, search is diminished. I know you're talking about Bard, right? And that's one example. But just for those who are not following this as closely as you and I, who might be listening and they're thinking like, what is Bard? Or like, I've heard Bard, they've talked about Bard, I've seen Bard, but like, can you just talk through for the audience, like, what does that actually mean? And then like, from there we can go to, what I want to get to basically is AI affecting the different parts of marketing, and Bard showing up in search is one example, but there's a bunch of other ones. And I think I want to get back to the heady conversation where we're really like unsure of what's going to happen, because that's also where I'm thinking too, is like, what does that mean for media? What does it mean for virality? What does it mean for recommendations? Like there's all these questions. But first, if you could just set the stage.
Yeah, like I made this like joke that AI is resurrecting old legacy boring software, because if you look at on Twitter, Photoshop is like the hottest app on Twitter. And then like, you had news articles last month that Bing is actually catching Google in terms of search market. Now it's still like they gained 2% and Google lost 1%. And there's still a huge gulf. But if we just step back, okay, like I think we should start. I know people have heard of ChatGPT, but let's just start there and then go to Bard, because the reason to start there is what's really interesting about what happened with ChatGPT is that was a different UX experience on an existing model, right? So like that existed through APIs, and it was like a fun project, and they just added a chat feature. And what we learned really rapidly is like humans like to speak to theoretically other humans, right? Like they like to feel like they're speaking to humans. And we've kind of seen this right through B2B. We saw chat explode as like core part of your go-to-market journey and core part of your customer journey. But then we had proof that chat experience for people is much, much better than the kind of click around things and trying to find things, because it exploded to 100 million. And so what Google have done is like, okay, well, we're going to be forced into doing this quicker than we think, because, hey, maybe this is good for the world, maybe this is bad for the world, but our stock price, so, we have to do it. And so, so Bard AI is really just a extension of feature snippets, right? They've been doing this for some time, which is like trying to find the thing that you want and put it onto the homepage, so you don't ever have to click on that link. And there is a whole other conversation that like, where do we go here if it breaks the synergy between like a content publisher? There was like an established partnership between a content publisher and Google, like this unwritten rule where, hey, we give you content, you give us some traffic. But Bard is really just an extension of feature snippets. Okay, what did we see with feature snippets? And we had still this in HubSpot. I've seen it in many other companies, that the overall click-through rate on your results on the first page start to decline. And the amount of traffic you can get from existing keywords that have not changed in position start to decline. So even if Google keeps its dominance, the fact that the feature snippet is now head and shoulders above everything else, and it's just this huge dominant space on the top of the search result pages, means it is going to decline. But the other super interesting thing is, okay, let's play this out and say that, hey, user behavior is showing us that maybe they don't want to click on the blue links anymore. They just want to talk to something, get the results, and have it all planned for them. Wow, that's like a huge departure from where we are today. But not just because that's a huge departure from the Google blue links. It's because there is a ton of open source models, like multiple open source models that all have these different chat experiences. So now if Google's blue links are commoditized and they're forced to compete in chat, they have to compete against thousands of other chat experiences that will all look kind of similar. And so they've lost that market dominance overnight. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. But I think the thing is, you have to either believe that people will want the combination of the chat and the blue links, or that people really will just gravitate towards the chat. And I think over time, people are going to gravitate towards the chat, and the blue links are going to look really, really archaic and old.
That's wild. Sorry. I'm taking it in.
It is wild. And I think it's, you said something in there that I've been thinking about a lot, which is like, we like to talk to a human. And, especially, if you're a remote worker, it's like, you're probably talking a lot in Slack or text or Discord or WhatsApp or whatever the place is that you communicate with people. And it doesn't feel that different to have another thread that's with an AI. And I think an interesting thing I'd love to hear your take on is, one of the challenges with chat is that the input looks the same everywhere. Like if you go to ChatGPT or you go to Bing Chat Today, or you go to Poe, or you go to any of these, the input's blank box and there's no results yet.
Right.
So it's also like, it's hard to know. On the one hand, I guess it does make more of like a level playing field. I hadn't really thought about it like that. And it's also interesting because it feels like you're going to build trust with the chat that you like for different things. Like I trust Midjourney, for example, to give me a better image than I do from like DALL-E.
Right.
And so my default is like, why spend time on DALL-E? Like if I want to generate something, I'm going to go to Midjourney and go do it. And then how does that shift? It's just it feels different than like the blue links. I agree with you. And even something about calling it blue links also, by the way, makes it sound crappy. Like it like harkens back to Yahoo. It's just like, oh yeah, your list of links. You like your links here?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then in that world, which it seems like we're going to, it's a question of when, right? Like when is that your default for most searches? We talked about, basically leaning into these other levers of growth, right? So for B2B, like you talked about virality with your product. We talked about media. There's like probably like a long tail of, integration play you could make. Like there's building the category, community. Are those the main ones? Are there other things that you think people should be thinking about? Like, let me phrase this as a better question. What would you tell somebody if they knew that 3 years from now they couldn't rely on Google? As a B2B marketer, what would you tell them?
Yeah. And so I want to be really honest because I feel like sometimes people come onto podcasts and are like, oh, this is what you should do. I really don't know what happens when you don't have search as like a dominant place because like I was talking to someone like, I'm glad I got to spend a lot of my career in the search dominant era because it's just like a lovely motion, right? You can rank, you can look at the traffic come in, it's scalable, repeatable, you can quantify it in customers. Like what a great time to be a marketer. And I think what's happening in marketing and is going to continue to happen is, even if you look at just today, what are the platforms that's growing in audience, right? TikTok, short form video, all of these kind of like engaging media formats where people start to spend their time. Like even Google, agnostic of AI, TikTok is going to take up some of its search dominance in certain categories, not across the board, but in certain categories. And so all of these platforms are actually not great for direct conversion from marketing tactics, which is like, I can see someone clicked on something and became a customer. We're going back to like the world of pre-internet Web 2, where marketing was much more reliant on like indirect causality, right? Like we are doing these things and something good is happening and we can kind of correlate it, but we can't say directly to the CEO and founder, hey, here's the nice chart to say this is exactly the revenue marketing are generating. And people were like, there was a lot of unhappiness in that phase because marketing struggled to like really articulate the core thing that they were bringing to the table. And so I think if you like look at 3 years out, and we are already going down that road, and even Facebook and Google are going to make some changes, I think, to the way that they show return on ad spend or return on advertising spend. They're going to show you not just the direct revenue that's attributed to your ads, they're going to start to show you the correlated revenue that's attributed to their ads. And I think they're doing that because they realize that we are going to get less and less data to be able to show you what you are getting back from our advertising, but we want to show you totality, it is doing something good. And so I think that's the way that marketers are going to have to think, right? Like if the most incredible brands are starting to think that way, there's probably something in it for us to think that way. I go back to like a all-in podcast episode I listened to November 2001, and Chamath was like, hey, if Elon Musk is selling his stock, maybe you should sell your stock. And I'm like, damn, I should have sold some stock.
Yeah. That was an insane episode. I remember listening to that myself thinking, nah, Chamath doesn't know.
Yeah, I was like,
whatever.
nah,
like,
it's going,
and then like
it's going
6 months
all the
like,
way up.
Yeah.
And so I remember that, right? Like, okay, well, of course, like if the smartest people and companies in the world are doing one thing, it's probably like there's a reason for that. And so I think in 3 years' time, you should own more of your audience directly. So like community, podcasts, newsletters, like all of these things, like how can I have a more direct relationship with my audience? The other thing is I think product-led growth is going to be a shining light within like the next, it's going to continue to grow in popularity because that freemium layer of your product can start to capture demand agnostic of platform. And I think actually that's going to continue to grow in importance. And I think marketers are going to have to get really good at articulating their strategy, the reason they are doing the things they are doing to founders, because I think marketers sometimes get lazy where it's just like, here's the chart, right? Like, this is the money you put the slot machine, you put this much money in the slot machine, this much money come out of the slot machine. Sure, but like, why do you believe you're doing the things you are doing and why are they the right things to do? So I think it's on marketing leaders to be able to describe to their CEO and founders who sometimes struggle with that, like the brand part, the product positions part, like why does that even matter? But I think those things are going to matter much, much more. So we're going to have to be able to articulate why that's so.
And then just to go further in that, if in a world where, like, let's imagine we're already there, or you're maybe in an industry where there isn't a lot of direct search demand, but there is a lot of demand for your product, and you're there today, you're saying like people need to really think about, like, as a marketer, almost to what traditional marketing has been. How do you evoke an emotion? How do you have like an unfair advantage? And you're talking about own channels and stuff. And then I'm really interested to hear thoughts on CAC and like customer acquisition cost and like what should people strive for? How should they measure that in this world? Do you think it's best to like look overall at all the activities you're doing or break it into buckets across? Yeah. Because like even, podcasting is a good example. We've been doing this podcast. This is like episode number
74,
74 one, something like that. And what we've seen is like, we have it on the site and we have it on all the apps. We look at hours spent with the brand and we see that if people come to the website and they engage there, some percentage of them like buy accounts and sign up and a higher percentage of them convert. So that seems really good. And then we also know that the majority of the listening happens in the apps. At this point, it's like 85% versus at the beginning, 85% was on the site. So we're looking at this, we're looking at the traffic on the site, then we're taking a guess at that there's going to be a different level of conversion for folks who are listening to the app, but we think there's a conversion. We come up with an overall thing and then we decide like, hey, this seems like it's working or it could work better or what have you. But it's kind of fuzzy. It's fuzzy to get all the way there. So and I feel like there's going to be more of this. There's going to be more of this 100%. Type of thing.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like, I'll move that number here. I'll move that number there. I'm not going to move it back there because it looks better.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also like, it's interesting because I find that the qualitative matters a lot. And so when the numbers are small, we paid attention. But now I will hear, it came up in these sales calls, or I'll hear from someone. I happen to run into them in person like, hey, actually, I really love this episode that you just did with XYZ.
Exactly.
I'm like, if you're telling me that seems like a good thing.
Yeah.
But it's fuzzy. And it's also then to do it at scale, you're making a lot of investments where that they might work incredibly well, but if they work incredibly well, a lot of it's going to show up as direct.
Right.
And it's going to show up as a strong brand, people searching for the brand coming in. Is that what you see too? Is that how you think about it?
Yeah, I think there's 3 buckets, and like part of this is based on, so like one of the things I did at HubSpot was led the acquisition of The Hustle, and so I had to really start to think through a little bit of this because we had always been much more focused on like direct attribution, and HubSpot go-to-market engine is just phenomenal, and it's like a finely tuned, it's a finely tuned thing, and the reason the Hustle deal mattered to us, I think everyone. When I saw it got written about, it was like, hey, like this makes a lot of sense because they can capture leads. It was like not about leads at all. It was really about the point that I made earlier, which is, hey, there's this other talent that really matters. And that talent knows how to like really create content that gets virality, really engaging, has an owned audience. But it's a different way you have to measure that. And so the ways that I thought about that was, there's 2 core ways I think you can measure indirect. And I will say, no company knows how to, every company has the same thing. Like I spent so many times with different B2B companies who do a lot of indirect, and it's all like, yeah, we have this assumed model. It's all assumptions, so it's just like what assumptions you want to take. But the way I thought about it was, okay, we had 2 metrics, which is the amount of captured demand that directly turns into customer revenue, and we could look at, that's a pretty easy like CAC to LTV model. And then there's the value of the owned audience. And so like our podcast network that we created, and all the newsletter and all of the things we created that we knew were indirect, and we purposely told, when we sold it to the board and all of that, like it was like an indirect thing, but we had a monetary value against how much it would cost us to reach that audience. And so you can get the average CPM rates on all of these different platforms, and you can say, well, we are owning this audience versus renting this audience. So that amount of value we've acquired versus the amount of value it's taken us to actually acquire that. And that's one way you can do it. The other one is like just, a really well-known tactic within B2B, which is incrementality, which is like for a lot of advertising, you can break up the US into certain regions, and you can have it on and off in certain regions, and then look to see how it correlates to revenue within those regions. And that's how we do it in Zapier. We do a lot of incrementality testing. So we actually have an indirect ROAS and we have a direct ROAS. So we can actually see the return on our ad spend or see the return on our efforts by doing this kind of incrementality model. Podcast is a really hard one. Like, I think podcast is hard to do with incrementality because you can't like turn your podcast off and then just turn it on like in this city. Yeah. And then my last point I would make is we're just going to have to get back to having conviction, right? Like, it's been great. Like, remember the days when I could look at the keywords and I could see like the exact ROI I got at every single keyword on organic search, like, but we're getting further and further away from that. And I think that means we're going to have conviction in the things that we want to do and actually just take some more like risks. And I think that's actually good for marketing, because I think data has been great, but it's also forced us all into the middle to do the same type of things, because they are like, oh, well, this just kind of works. And maybe has like diminished some of the creativity.
I love that. And it's funny because when you said conviction, it's so simple, and yet it hits, right? Yeah. Like it hits. Like that's one of those things. It's like, you're going to have conviction what you're doing. You're going to have to believe in it. It's exactly. Like, well, you didn't have to for a while there, but like now you do. And it's interesting to, as you were saying, that was also making me think about startups. Like, and if you don't know what you just missed in terms of the keyword factor, that's all you would have. Like, the default would have to be that. So it's just interesting because it's like the companies that grew a lot during this time period and got used to that, it's pretty hard to get used to having really direct numbers and then going to indirect and then going to belief. Yeah. But I do agree with you. I feel like it's a transition that people have to get through. And it's something, it all comes back to like the fact that it's B2B or B2C. It's like human beings. The entertainment value is another thing I was thinking about, you said there, which is just like the value of that owned audience and the value of like, if I can teach you something while entertaining you, I'm going to beat somebody who can just teach you something. Right. And also, we're both going to beat somebody who's just selling you something. And like that order of how those things work. Okay. I want to go back to the beginning, because we were talking about AI and saying, does AI, for the people at the top, does it make them better, or does it bring everyone to the average? Does it actually like chop the differentiation away? And as we're having this conversation, at least where I get to, is that if you can take away and automate a bunch of the pieces of folks' jobs that used to take a lot of their time, and now they can have more time for building conviction and taking risks and truly understand their customer, I would hope that would push the people at the top to be better than they were before. How are you feeling? Yeah,
I agree. So I came into marketing from a failed career in software engineer, but I always think through things through that logic, which is all jobs are just a series of inputs, right? Like every job is just like a series of input. And what AI is going to allow us to do is automate away a bunch of those inputs. And so you're left with a couple of inputs that still really matter. And I think to your point, it's like, how do you become 10x of those inputs, right? Like write-in is a really good example. And so maybe AI strips away research, maybe it strips away the brainstorming of new articles, and it strips away a bunch of things. I actually don't think it ever strips away incredible, like final draft of incredible content. Like I don't think I would ever take something from an AI and publish it. It's just not the kind of content that I think would resonate on the internet or stand out from the masses. And that's because like the angle, the kind of unique angle that you have, the entertainment that you have, the humor that you have, the personality that you have, and maybe just like a couple of ways that you think about that thing differently than anyone else, like those things still matter. And I think the best people will become even better at that, because they have, what AI really is like the most incredible intern at the moment. Like hopefully this is the whole thing. Like at the moment, it's an incredible intern. Maybe it becomes your boss, and then like who knows what happens, right? But at the moment, it's your
Today it's your intern. Yeah.
Yeah. Today it's your intern, and like who knows in 5 years if we're the intern, and then it's like, does it like us or not? But the way I approach it is like, okay, I start everything with, okay, can my intern help me, right? And I try to figure out if my intern is good or bad at that, and if it's semi-good, it can help me with some parts. If it can't help me, and then some parts, it's like, oh, it's much better than me at that, so we should do that. And I think that's what we're going to have to do is like, okay, well, what can my intern do? What can they take off me? And what can I get much, much better at? But I do think it drags, the interesting thing, I think it drags a lot of people, because I've seen this in like someone released a study in terms of developers, like a lot of like okay-ish developers, it drags them up without having to do a lot of the work. So it is deflationary for that middle bucket, I think, in terms of salary and opportunities. Like it's going to become much more competitive.
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay, Kieran, I have some rapid fire questions. So I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, and we'll try to do them all if possible. Just whatever comes to mind, you just go with the answer. We'll see where we get. Does that sound good?
I love how you're teeing this up, Savage.
Yeah, you like that?
I'll just go.
Ready?
Are you sure? Okay, I will go with what's in my head, but I started this thing telling me I'm a weird person, so just be prepared.
We like it.
Do you watch Succession?
Oh yeah.
Did you like the finale?
I did.
No spoilers. I haven't seen.
Okay.
There's no spoilers. There's no spoilers.
Okay.
I did, but I hope for something different.
Okay.
Fair.
What's the biggest mistake you see marketers making in 2023?
Not leading with customer insights. We've got too fixated on data and not talking to customers. Go speak to your customers. Jesus. Like, talk to your customers.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. What's one brand that's doing it right?
I'm going to pick Ramp just because they're one of the most incredible, fastest growing stories. And I think it's how they build products, less of the marketing, but they are on fire. I have a lot of respect for what they're doing.
What's one thing all marketing teams should invest in now?
Brand and understanding why you're differentiated. Like what do you stand for? What is the thing I want to tell the world?
What's one thing all marketers should stop doing?
Oh, wow. Solutioning before you've clearly articulated the problem.
Oh yeah. Nice one. Describe the next year in marketing in 3 words.
The unknown, chaotic, incredibly fun.
That was 4.
Fun.
But we'll give it to you.
Incredibly fun will count as 1. I like that. And what should be all marketers' North Star metric in 2023?
Customer usage, customer happiness.
Perfect. Kieran, thank you so much.
Cool.
This was a great conversation. And I love that we got in there on a lot. We tackled a lot of big stuff that I think is going to be really helpful. And I just appreciate you getting in there and sharing where you're at, and also, sharing stuff that we're not clear on. Because I think we can't know what the future is going to be exactly. But I do think a lot of these things you're talking about, investing in own audiences, building a brand, doing it early, thinking about these indirect things, having conviction, these are very important things to start doing before you have to do them. Right.
Yeah.
That's what I think about this whole conversation is if we could be that conversation, all in for somebody else, I would hope there would be people hearing this thinking years from now, if I had done that, I would have been better off than the situation where I just relied on these other things I'm doing today.
Yeah. I do think AI means that fast followers or fast movers are unfairly more rewarded than they've ever been before, and laggards are more penalized than they've ever been before.
I agree. That's what it seems like. Thank you so much. Where can people best connect with you online to learn more and follow you?
I'm on Twitter at SearchBrat. I still go in there occasionally, even though it is a wild platform.
Are you on LinkedIn? You're on LinkedIn,
I'm
right?
on LinkedIn. I'm actually on LinkedIn way more, actually. Yeah, you can connect me on LinkedIn. I do a ton more on LinkedIn than I do on Twitter.
Yeah, same. All right. Thank you, sir. Good to see you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Isn't it interesting to think that we are really going to a place where we used to be, like, which I've been thinking about a lot, that, you know, from this conversation and in general, it's like, okay, we had this period of time where you could track literally everything on the internet. GDPR comes along, you can track a lot less. You need permission for cookies. Okay, you can't follow people around with these pixels, blah, 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 blah. Then you still see all the search terms. Now you can't see the search terms. Then, oh no, generative AI may take away the ability to have even people coming to your website through search. And so all of these things basically get you back to a place that everything was in pre-internet. But instead, it's a post-internet world with AI telling us what to do. And that's the world that's in front of us.
That was the first time that I actually felt comforted about our future.
Oh, really?
Yes. When Kieran was like, so it's just like going back to, you know, like Web 2. I was like, now we're talking. Now
Bring
we're talking.
Bring the vinyl back.
He was talking about Facebook sort of changing their metrics around like correlative metrics. And there was something about that I was like, yes, we're back to a world where like qualitative data is as integral as quantitative data. And I don't know, there's something about that feels like inspiring to me. Maybe it's just because numbers scare me. I don't know.
Well, it's also that everything will not be the same in this world.
Yes.
Uniqueness is valued. Being different is valued. Yes.
All of that. Yes, sorry, I'm getting excited.
I know you get excited, but it is funny because it's like that. All of those pieces, and when he said the third thing people need to do is have conviction. The craziest part of that is how far folks have gotten without it.
It's crazy. I think he's also. I'm sure we've had other guests come on and talk about this, but I feel like Kieran really broke down like sort of the reliance on data and the fact that like becoming less reliant on data is going to force marketers to take more risks and like really lean into their creativity. That's also like super exciting.
Yes. Yeah, no, I think it is all like, it is exciting if you like being creative. It's exciting if you're comfortable with types of risks. It's exciting if you like qualitative data and talking to customers. And I think it is going to change like who the marketers are, right, over the long term. That's the other thing. It's like there's still going to be certain things that you need to track incredibly closely. And I think that's another good point of like assigning these value metrics of these different things. And it's like, you know, a good example I think I could give that's like pretty concrete is we do some sponsorships and newsletters. We know how much it costs to sponsor those newsletters. We know the CPM. So in our own newsletter, how much is that worth? Mm-hmm. And if you start to put those pieces, it's a very simple thing that he said, but I think it's like, it's something that if you can, it's easy to not do, I guess is my point. And then it's easy to underinvest in. It's also interesting, I thought, what he said, which is he's never seen a B2B company that's gotten big just with advertising.
Yeah.
Which is like kind of surprising. I think people assume with like having consistent customer acquisition costs that's what that means. And that like from his vantage point, he's never seen that. And I can only think of a couple that have gotten really big just with advertising, and then they couldn't sustain it because of course you get more competitors in the space, that price of the advertising goes up. It's a hard thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, also speaks to the importance of product-led growth, which he talked about too. So
Yep. Yeah, it was a good one.
Lots of good
stuff in there.
Lots of good stuff.
Well, look, if you're watching the show, thanks for watching. If you're listening, thanks for listening.
Give us some qualitative feedback, you know?
Give us some qualitative feedback. You can always tweet it at us. You know where to find us, C Savage, and give me the loot. You can find us on LinkedIn. Love a LinkedIn comment.
Love it.
Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. Tell us about other guests you think we should have. We'd love to hear from you on that. If you prefer to keep your comments to dark social, you can send us an email, ttlpod@wistia.com. Or if you'd like it to be public, very public, you can always rate and review the show. Always lovely to have those as well. That's it. Thank you so much. Until next time.